Yeah, so welcome, Rolf. In fact, I was talking to you. I think you had to move out. So we are joined by Mr. Mohandas Pai. So Mohan has been very active with us as our chair for both Higher Education Committee and Skill Development Committee. He is, of course, a very eminent industry person, former CFO of Infosys, and currently he is into private equity. He's an angel funder, and he's very multifaceted. He's been honored by a lot of Padma Shri, which is one of the state awards. So he is going to be the first speaker from our side, and we are still waiting for Nivritti Rai. She's the current skill development chair, and she is also the Intel country head. She's extremely dynamic and versatile industry leader, and one of the technocrats, women technocrats in the. Uh, we also have Andres Schleicher, OECD, director. He is going to be joining us. He's still not on the call, and we also have from Senai, Brazil. We have a speaker. I think his name is. He's also not yet joined.
Marcelo Prim seems to be on.
Yeah, Marcelo Prem, yeah.
MP. Okay. Mm-hmm. Right.
So it's a very multifaceted international speaker group that we have, and I think the audience will, of course, we will be joined by our Secretary General, Mr. Dilip Chinoy. He is still coming. So give us a minute. We will just organize this and come.
Thank you for introducing everybody. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. May I request all participants to please switch off their camera? That will help us in keeping the bandwidth issues. So participants, if you can keep your cameras as well as your microphones on mute. Thank you so much. So Shiv, should we start?
Yes, please. So I have spoken to other two speakers. They are just joining in 2-3 minutes time, so we can start because Mr. Pai and Nivriti is also joined, and Dilip sir is also there, so we can start.
So good evening to all our eminent speakers and participants. I am Shobha Mishra Ghosh, Secretary General FICCI, and on behalf of FICCI, it is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Mohandas Pai, Honorary Advisor, FICCI Skill Development Committee and Chairman, Manipal Education, Global Education, Ms. Nivruti Rai, FICCI
Hi, you are not audible. Yes. Can you please check your mic? Request all the guests to just give us 30 seconds. Perhaps there is some technical issue. 30 seconds, it will just be sorted. Just 30 seconds. Thank you.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead. Yeah.
If you switch off your video, we can hear you better.
Yeah.
All right. So good evening once again to all our eminent speakers and participants. I'm Shobha Mishra Ghosh, Assistant Secretary General FICCI. And on behalf of FICCI, it is my pleasure to invite Mr. Mohandas Pai, Honorary Advisor, FICCI Skill Development Committee and Chairman Manipal Global Education, Ms. Nivruti Rai, Chair FICCI Skill Development Committee and Country Head Intel India, Mr. Andrea Schleicher, Director of Education and Skills at OECD, Mr. Marcelo Prim, Innovation and Technology Head Senai, Brazil, Dr. Rolf Hermann, Head International Cooperation, Vocational Education and Training, BIBB Germany, and Mr. Dilip Chinoy, Secretary General, FICCI. Since we have guests from across the world, I briefly will introduce the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, which was established in 1927, guided by Mahatma Gandhi, and it is the largest and oldest apex business organization. A non-government, not-for-profit organization, FICCI is the voice of India's business and industry and acts as a bridge between industry and government. From influencing policy to encouraging debate, engaging with policymakers and civil society, articulates the views and It serves members and multinational companies strength from diverse regional chambers of commerce and industry across states, reaching out to over 250,000 companies. FICCI provides a platform for networking and consensus building within and across sectors and is the first port of call for Indian industry policymakers and international business community. Friends, the outbreak of COVID-19 has not only made millions sick, but has also affected the lives of more than 3/4 of the world population that is being forced to live under major restrictions. It has brought economic activities across the world to a standstill with repercussions not just on lives, but also livelihood. Developing countries like India face several socio-economic challenges. These include volatility and precipitous fall in financial markets and commodity prices, and financing gap due to shrinking fiscal revenues and COVID-19 expenditure. Liquidity crunch, disruption in international trade and transport, depletion of foreign exchange reserves, devaluation of currencies, fall in export revenues due to export controls, and contraction in global markets are also causes for concern. Global resilience and rebound will depend largely on how people get used to the new normal. Till a few months back, we were discussing the impact of disruptive technologies and jobs and skills. In one sweep, COVID pandemic has reset the society, economy, and lives. Each one of us today is forced to bring in behavioral changes that will impact our consumption patterns, which in turn will impact the products and services. Long-distance supply chains have had their weaknesses exposed, and organizations will look more locally for supply and customer relationships. Our appetite for traveling will take a hit through fear of exposure to the infection and also lack of cash. New business models are being thought through, new services are emerging, and therefore new skill sets are required. And most importantly, digital or hybrid skill development models are emerging. The lockdown all over the globe brought life to standstill, and education skill development institutions were the first to be locked, keeping more than 1.8 million children and youth out of education. Digital learning has come to rescue, but the majority of vulnerable are out. Ambassadors and trainers need training, digital contents needs to be developed, and robust evaluation and check-in mechanisms to be put in place. Today, during the course of the next 90 minutes, leading thought leaders from across the globe will talk about the way forward on rebuilding the entire value chain of skill ecosystem. Through this extremely exciting, important webinar, we are being watched live in almost 11 countries. With this brief context setting, I would now invite Mr. Dilip Chinoy, Secretary General FICCI, to deliver his welcome remarks. Mr. Chinoy was also the Managing Director of National Skill Development Corporation of India. Over to you, Dilip.
Thank you, Shobha. Good evening to those who are joining in Australia, good afternoon in India, and good morning to people in other parts of the world. You know, we have the objective of this as, you know, sharing the different perspectives from around the world in terms of skilling and employment post COVID-19. We have an extremely eminent group of panelists. You know, first we have Mr. T.V. Mohandas Pai, who is not only an advisor to FICCI Skill Development Committee and the chairman of MAGE, but he is a renowned thought leader in India, you know, and has had a lot of industry experience earlier than this. We can actually, you know, look forward to him giving a very nice perspective. So very warm welcome to you, Mr. Mohandas Pai. Of course, we have Ms. Nivruti Rai, Chair, FICCI Skill Development Committee and the Country Director, Intel, you know, who brings with her a vast range of experience. And in fact, you know, if things were normal, we would have just actually concluded a major program on artificial intelligence. So she is very apt to actually speak on technology as an enabler for future skilling. So very warm welcome to you, Nivruti, and thank you for joining. Andreas, Director of Education and Skills at the OECD. I mean, you come with a vast range of experience, multicultural, multi-country experience, and we really look forward to, hearing from you on the reforms and rebuilding of the global skill ecosystem. Marcelo from Brazil, and I see other colleagues from Brazil on the call there. So very warm welcome to you. It was less than a year ago that we were actually in your premises talking about the future of skill development and inter-country collaboration and collaboration with the BRICS. So it's great to have you with here. The other panelist, Dr. Ralph Herrmann from Germany. Germany is now a model for many things in terms of the quick announcement and implementation of the support to industry, the containment of the spread, and getting back to the new normal. And really, you're also considered a leader in the skilling space, and especially the dual system. So very warm welcome to you. Just 4 quick points from my side. I think what has happened is that due to the initiatives that have been taken to address the skill deficit and the way to enable students to learn, there has been a huge disruption in the traditional way of thinking of how education and skills can be delivered. So is this going to be temporary? Would this actually continue post-COVID? Will traditional ways actually give way to blended learning? Will blended become more acceptable? Because a lot of people felt that online and digital skilling or digital education was not as effective as physical contact, etc. The second is, in an era where you see textile firms, graduating to make masks or making, protective equipment. You have alcohol firms turning to make sanitizers. You have auto component companies making ventilators. And the existing workers, they had to not only get them to work, but also reskill, retool, and actually create this whole ecosystem. Does this give any lessons for how we need to actually cooperate in the future? The third area is that there is a life post-COVID, and is post-COVID after a vaccine has been developed, or after we understand how to contain it and how to prevent the spread. So how will actually work environments change? What is it, the additional skills that we would like to actually get? And how do we enable that, to be percolated in the whole economy? And the fourth point, which is important, is that in many countries, and not only India, the issue of migrant workers and how they actually stay, work, and actually decide where they will go. What is the new normal post COVID-19? How does technology, how does the skill ecosystem actually enable and bridge this gap between where people want to work and where people find it safe to work versus where the jobs are? So I think with those few remarks, I will just hand it over and once again to welcome all the participants who have joined and all the panelists who have been there. I look forward to actually a very exciting session over the next 1.5 hours. And thank you very much. And Shobha, back to you.
Thank you, Dilip. I think those were very important and crucial points that you highlighted. So we will move on to bring in Mr. Mohandas Pai. He is a Padma Shri awardee and has been a guiding force behind several path-breaking initiatives that he has done. And he is a very member of various government think tanks. So over to you, Mohan.
Thank you, Shobha. Thank you, folks, for being here. It's good to talk to all of you at this rather somber times. First, we need to understand that the COVID crisis, the global crisis, is impacted more countries directly than both the great wars, the First World War and the Second World War, because more than 150 countries are shut down because of this virus. And the virus is not going away tomorrow. It's going to take some time. We don't know when humanity will have a cure. So we have to learn to live with it. And learning to live with it means social distancing, wearing masks in public, etc. That means the old ways of doing things, personal interaction, being close to people, is not going to be possible in the near future. And that we need to take change. But the world has changed. Second, the impact of this has been that digital has come to the fore in a remarkable manner. All of us used to talk that we're going to have disruptive technologies and the digital world is going to become a reality for everybody. And suddenly we see what was supposed to happen 2 to 5 years from now globally has happened immediately. And this immediate happening has had a great impact on people. Let me give you an example. Most countries around the developed world has come out with many means of giving direct income support to people. But to give income support to people, the government should know all their bank accounts. They should know who they are. They should have an identity. They should have a database. And suddenly, people are scrambling for databases, trying to sell checks. People are going around, etc. And India had built in Aadhaar with 1.2 million people, and the government has got a direct benefit transfer bank database of 400 million people. They've been remitting money throughout, and a poor developing country or an emerging market like India could send the money to about 350 million beneficiaries, 350 million beneficiaries, more than the total population of the United States and maybe the total population of Europe just in 2 weeks' time. And this shows that today and in the future, every individual has to be connected to each other digitally through a cell phone or a smartphone. Now, we also have a problem that out of 7.6 billion people in the world, only about 5.5 billion have a cell phone, or of which 4.5 billion are connected to the internet. That means through a smartphone. And that means a large number of people are excluded. So now we have to look at globally to see whether the globe requires a universal declaration of digital rights. Like we have a universal declaration of human rights in 1946, we need a universal declaration of digital rights where every individual is connected to each other and to the government digitally. Every individual has access to data. Every individual has access to a smartphone to collect the data. And if they cannot buy, government has to provide for them all over. Because in case of a crisis, in case of something going wrong or another pandemic, we should not have them left out. So digital has to be the way forward for government and for society and for everybody else, because that's the only way every individual can get information, every individual can get education, every individual can get health, and all government services staying where they are. So we are shown in this crisis that physical connections does not necessarily have to be there all the time. And at the same time, large numbers of people are left out, and we are shown the gaps in the digital ecosystem for the future. Next is, in a country like India, what this COVID crisis has shown is that our existing economic model, where labor goes to places where they work, especially for labor-intensive industries, has to change. We have a migrant crisis. India has about 72 million migrants. And today we are seeing maybe about 1 to 1.5 million migrants want to go back to their villages because they're coming to the big cities. They're working there for meager wages. They send money back home, but they're finding they don't have savings. They cannot even last 1 month without somebody wanting to help them. And government has not been able to help them because they are not in their database in that particular town, and they are elsewhere in their particular villages because the family is connected. So suddenly we had this challenge of about 1.5 million people wanting to go back. Many of them started walking 200, 300, 500 kilometers, and we see those images every single day. And this has happened because middle India, the big states where about maybe 60% of population resides, have a large population. The fertility rate is still high. Southern India and the big towns have a smaller population, and the jobs are there. The jobs are not in the big states where there is labor surplus. So India has to now devise a strategy whereby labor-intensive industries will go to those areas where there is labor surplus. If you look at China, in the 1980s, China started the SEZ, where labor came from all over. And even today, for the Chinese New Year, when they go back, 600 million people travel all over China, and there's chaos all over. But they can go back. Even now, when employment has come down in China, we're seeing many, many people go back. For countries like India, we need to rework our strategy to make sure that we are able to create labor-intensive industries closer to places where there is surplus labor, and the need for labor to migrate long distances to get meager wages is not necessary at all. The next point I would like to say is this has reinforced what we have been saying, that we got to leverage technology for skilling. Skilling has got to be more digital. Skilling requires simulation technology. Skilling requires virtual reality. Skilling requires augmented reality. And skilling requires artificial intelligence, and also ways for individuals to learn themselves using digital tools. I'm sure Nivriti will talk about it. This is required because skilling has to now move from a physical level skilling to more digital, digital come physical, where the physical element is for real life experiences, where people will work doing things with their hands, people will work working on a machine, people will create something else. But at the same time, they have to leverage technology to understand how to get the knowledge, how to get the information, and how to get all the other things to fulfill what they have to learn. And I think this is very important because we have to make sure people are skilled in many different tasks, which are part of a family of tasks. If a person is skilled in a particular task, it's not certain whether he or she will retain the job. So they have to be skilled basically in a family of skills. And in those family of skills, which are very common across various areas, then they can get specialized training in a shorter period of time. So skilling has to move forward in a very differentiated manner all over. The next point I would like to make is, today one of the big challenges you have all around the world is the mismatch between skills and jobs. So I think what we're seeing in India is the rise of platforms like Better Place, where 7.5 million people are registered, where employers come and put up their jobs, and there is a matching going on, and the people with skills, particularly blue collar, know exactly where they have to go and what they have to do, and they're connected. Now look at this. For a person who's skilled going somewhere, if he goes for a particular job and loses the job, what do they do? So we require platforms where information about the kind of jobs and everything else is available, platforms where they can go and get training and skilling, and platforms where they can get the information about what they need to do to improve their career prospects. So we need utilities like that which can be used. Next point is that the governments too have to work very hard to create an information base for migrants. We have seen that the governments in North India, from where the labor comes, hardly know how many migrants have gone from their cities. Some of them have some database, most do not. So when they all came back, one chief minister of a particular state, large state, said that he's not going to have his people go back. So he is creating a database. He's calling all of them, testing them for the skills, giving them skill education, skill training, and then connecting them to employers. And he says that 500,000 people have been connected to employers and have the possibility of getting jobs. So I think each government should have a department for migrants along with the skill development to make sure that if people go from their state and go elsewhere, they are in touch with them, especially for large countries like India with so much of diversity. So I want to end here by saying that the world has changed and the impact is global, and our habits have also changed, because after 45 days of looking at things, changing your habit, the way you do things, you probably will do things very, very differently. Digital is the future. Now for countries like India, we need to reshape our policies to make sure that we create labor-intensive jobs where people are, instead of asking them to go far away and become migrants and earn less money and not have enough to keep body and soul together. And we also need use of digital technologies for skilling with simulation, etc. So interaction and classroom skilling and physical skilling does come down. Create flexibility and a family of skills so they can get specialized training. And lastly, we need a platform to connect skilled trainers, to connect those skills with employers, so that in this platform, people can discover jobs, people can change, and people can hopefully hope for better jobs. Thank you very much, Shobha.
Thank you, Mohan. I think that was extremely exciting, and like always, you have given a unique idea. The Universal Declaration of Digital Rights is something I think is going to come out from this webinar and become quite popular. A few years back, I had heard that data is going to be the new currency. and I think that is where we are now, because access to data for each and every person is eminent, and that is where we will be, moving on, and therefore digital technology is going to play a major role. So the next speaker coming in, Nivritti Rai, who is our chair of FICCI Skill Development Committee and also the country head of Intel, is also known as the innovation lady in the field of technology. And her outstanding work on making semiconductor chips that consume less power using a technique called error correcting codes has been globally recognized. And at Intel, she provides overall engineering and business unit leadership and leads operations for site, driving innovation, cross-group efficiencies, and execution for engineering teams. Over to Nivritti. We look forward to another exciting address from you.
Thank you, Shobha. Mohan is always a tough act to follow. So I always worry, where my positioning is, but, I'll try my best. I want to start with setting a little bit of a context before I jump into technology, because, everybody would be expecting that I would talk about technology first. But let me start with setting a context. And the context starts with a quote. Hope of a country lies in education and skilling of its youth. The hope of a country lies in the education and skilling of the youth. Skilling is not a problem that happens at a given point of time. Skilling is required always. Situations can only accelerate skilling requirements, but skilling has been a challenge and will continue to be a challenge because humans' minds, human creativity is evolving and doing things better and better. So let me start with, today in India, if you look at, we have about 40% of our population who are employed. Of the 40% that are employed, 2/3 are called main workers, meaning they spend more than 183 days working regularly. And then we have marginal workers, which are about 137 million. Who am I worried about in a situation where, the non-digitization of technology is these marginal workers? But another number that I would like to share is, in India, we have 64 million micro, small, and medium enterprises, which creates about 25% of the country's revenue. And a lot of these are the marginal workers. Why? Because many of these enterprises are based in the villages where connectivity is not there. Having said that, I'm going to share one statistic with you from McKinsey. McKinsey quoted that by 2030, which means in another 10 years, and this was, guys, prior to the pandemic, so that pandemic will change things, but these numbers were identified or worked upon before the pandemic. What it said is, by 2030, in the next 10 years, China will lose 240 million workers to automation. India will lose half of it, 120 million workers due to automation, and US will lose 60 million. So it's just like half and half and half, 240 for China, 120 for India, and 60 million for United States. And all of it because the automation was coming. However, it did not talk about what will be the growth. We will lose these jobs to automation, but will there be new created? So I'll give you another analysis, which was done by MIT and University of Boston. And it said from the year 1947, when India got independence that many years ago, to 1987, 17% job losses happened due to automation, but 19% were gained. So net, we saw 2% increase. Now, what happened after 1987? After 1987 to 2016, which is closer to now, 16% jobs were lost, but only 10% were gained. However, the growth for the world still kept happening, 3 to 4% rate. The world kept growing. roughly, they say one robot will replace 3.3 jobs. But what has not happened from 1987 to 2016 is we have not created those new use cases, those new opportunities. Let me go back a little further and I will tell you how those new opportunities can come. You know, many of you have heard about the Luddites. Many of you have heard about the British textile mills that destroyed machineries because they thought these machineries are taking away my jobs. The Luddites didn't believe in technology. In 16th century, that many 100 years ago, we had a similar kind of anxiety, automation anxiety, as well as, you know, anxiety due to wars, etc. To an extent that Queen Elizabeth I refused a patent for automatic knitting because she thought so many women's jobs will go away. They called it the threat of machine age. In 1930, Keynes, you know, so many of you have heard about the economist Keynes, he called technological unemployment. And he said, this technological unemployment will lead to the age of leisure and abundance. Now, part of it is true. Leisure, I'm not sure. I don't think any of us are enjoying the age of leisure where we are working, 12 hours a week. We are still working, but creating many more jobs, have much better understanding, and are living in significant abundance. In 1995, Jeremy Rifkin wrote a very interesting book, and it became a bestseller. It was called The End of Work. I really don't think that the end of work has come. We are in 2020, and on top of that, situation has changed. And I told you early on that skilling and education don't happen because of situation. They get expedited, accelerated due to situation, because hope continues with education and skilling and creates value. So now this pandemic has happened, a new situation has been created in this world. And I very much agree with Mohan, who said it's almost like a world war. I personally feel it's like a World War III happening, where so many countries are involved, and so many people are struggling. So much life is being lost. So what is happening in this new pandemic world? All of the automation I already talked about was happening. Automation was happening. People were looking at artificial intelligence. What did this pandemic do? Opened up our eyes to a new world, to a new tomorrow. And I personally feel these 4 to 5 sectors will get significantly impacted. Sector number 1, education. Like I said, hope equals education equals value, all kinds of value, social, character, economic. All of those values will be created through education, through skilling. In the area of education, a lot of digitization will be required. The second segment, which we are experiencing day in, day out, is the healthcare segment. These two segments, I feel, have been not employing technology to the level they could. The third one is workplace of the future. All of us are struggling, to be working from home. Are we getting enough bandwidth? Do we have good connectivity? Do we have enough speed? Is the visual, I was hoping that a lot of people would turn down the videos, because video uses a lot of bandwidth. And then, we can have the bandwidth so everybody can hear the 173 plus attendees. Retail and commerce. How many of us are using the Dunzos and the big baskets and whatnot? And then entertainment. Our lives cannot be all work. If it is all work, our mental, situation will be, very tiring. So entertainment, meaning e-sport, gaming, streaming will be the requirement. So what are the segments that I called out? Education, healthcare, workplace of future, retail and commerce, and entertainment. And what are those underlying technologies that are foundational to this transformation. Again, I'm going to put them into three categories. One, communication, whether it's through voice, whether it's through video, or whether it's collaborative. We have to focus and accelerate our capabilities in using communication and in building communication. So, many of these segments that I talked about will require this communication. All of them, education all the way through entertainment. I believe, and Mohan talked about some regulatory changes requirement. I believe that our networks, our communications, our 5G technologies, next gen technologies need to be thought of like we think of our basic infrastructure of size, water, electricity, and road. It has to become that required, and each one of us needs to think of like we think of a road. I'm very uncomfortable in this, so we work together as industry, we work together as consortium and say this road needs to be fixed. Similarly, we got to think of these technologies as infrastructure requirement for growth. Technology companies, services companies, SMEs, MSMEs that I talked about, even society will be requiring in this new tomorrow. I also believe that with technologies like 5G, we have to get ourselves ready for this automation in manufacturing. A lot of our employees, these migrant workers that we talked about, how can we leverage them, skill them such that they can help towards an automation of a factory? What are some of the underlying technology requirement even in 5G as well as in these automation that I talked about? Will be technology like AI. And I will tell you, the real part of AI in the end-to-end development of a solution is only 15%. This is the 15% that requires a highly talented, highly skilled Android kind of a AI expert. But there is 85% before and after. Can we leverage our migrant workers and explain to them how data can be contextualized? If you see a red dot, press this because this means breast cancer. If you see this, press that. Those are the kind of things we can leverage these migrant workers. Now, more educated people can do higher level of complexity of work. So underlying technology for communication like 5G and AI. Next thing, if everything is digitized, imagine the need for cloud. Imagine the need for edge. All of that will be required, and that is what is going to enable digitization. So our teachers, our students need to be taught how we can make our cloud smart. How can we make our edge smart? What is the use case I can build creating content for our education? Has to be taught, has to be skilled to our people. I also feel that we need to be thinking the mindset, and this is not just for India, it's for all the countries, the mindset of companies, mindset of government, mindset of academicians need to, and even the people who are helping with skilling, has to change from component to solution, end-to-end solution, such that you can create what is the need of the hour. I talked about education end-to-end. Who are the components? The students, the teachers, the classroom environment, and the content. Can we leverage technology to create value for the student, to let the student consume, to create value for the teacher such that he can impart? Can we create an environment? In my time, we used to get together as students and do combined studies for projects. We had bigger projects and we worked together. Can we create situations like that? And Microsoft Team and Zoom and all are trying to do that, but create it such that you get the satisfaction. So continue to think in a way where you think solution. Don't think just component, which means many companies, government, academicians, many countries need to come together. I really think World Health Organization is just one world organization. Can we think of World Technology Organization? Can we think of World Policy Organization? So a lot of these kind of thoughts have been coming to my mind. And I believe implementation of technology in these segments can only be successful if we think jointly, if we think in a manner that a solution can come together and then create value. So I want to end with, again, quoting the same quote, which I really believe in. Hope of a country lies in education and skilling of our youth and of our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nivriti. I think that was a wonderful articulation of the situation that we are in, the challenges and the solutions. You talked about end-to-end solutions. You gave some unique ideas of why can't we have World Tech Organization or World Policy Organization like the World Health Organization. I think these are some things which we need to mull over. And while India is facing so many challenges and we are a developing country, the next speaker is somebody who is actually leading the education and skill initiatives in OECD countries, which are the developed world and definitely have better solutions and better education and skill development delivery mechanisms. So I welcome Mr. Andreas Schleicher, Director for the Directorate of Education and Skill, Paris. Mr. Schleicher is Special Advisor on Education Policy to the Secretary General at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development in Paris. As a key member of the OECD Senior Management Team, Andreas supports the OECD strategy to produce analysis and policy advice that advances economic growth, social progress. And Mr. Schleicher is the recipient of numerous honors and awards, and he has been quite a regular speaker with us. Over to you, Andreas.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be with FICCI again. I think you do an amazing role in sort of mobilizing what we know about skill systems around the world. And actually, this crisis has been unique in the sense that it's the first time that both the development and the deployment of skills are now contingent on technology. That is really what's happening the first time. And technology is, my previous speakers have mentioned this as well, is full of contradictions. So on the one hand, it's incredibly democratizing, allowing anybody to contribute, to collaborate, but it's also concentrating power at a rate that we have never seen before, putting all the means in the hands of very few organizations. Technology is incredibly particularizing. The smallest voice can be heard anywhere, but it's also incredibly homogenizing, often squashing individual differences and cultural uniqueness. Technology is incredibly empowering, and there's no better place to see this than India. Your most successful companies now have the product before they have the money. They are not created by big industry, but they are created by a big idea. That I think is very, very unique. But at the same time, we can also see technology to be deeply disempowering. Now, when we become the slaves of algorithms that tell us, when to turn left and right and what to think and what to do. So this is really what the skills picture of the future is about. That technology is building, huge potential, accelerating, amplifying what we do, but also, putting us in a quite precarious situation. If you think about the firm, digital platform technology drives the reorganization of firms. That is the platform economy that is, shaping the world now. You no longer know what is a small and a big company. Employers can have a huge global footprint. The peer markets actually make it harder to distinguish who is a buyer and who is a business. And governments are starting to work with platforms. And this is sort of a huge kind of game changer impacting on the skills of people. When you think about what this means for individuals, the one thing is, routine tasks are diminishing in importance. The kind of things that are easy to teach, easy to test are precisely the kind of things that are also easy to digitize and automate. And that's a huge challenge for our current skill systems and education systems. Now we have become very good to educate second-class robots, people who are very good to repeat what we tell them. But actually, in this age where routine cognitive skills are diminishing in value, we need to think harder what makes us first-class humans. Now, how do we complement, not substitute, the artificial intelligence that we have created in our computers? Technology-intensive tasks are rising in importance, and you can put the picture together and you can see very clearly where the future of work really lies. And if you translate this into employment, supply and demand, look at the United States, look at Europe, and take a very simple example of a truck driver. That's the kind of job that technology could digitize almost today in most situations. And imagine, we don't do that today, but you do this in a decade from now. The impact, if you think about this, we're talking about, several millions of jobs just in one little sector, completely, lost from this. Now, whether technology is going to create more jobs or, destroy more jobs, that is very hard to assess. But what is very clear is that the nature of every job is going to be very, very different. The kind of skills that are going to make us successful. Most jobs will be more skills intensive, but also the nature of skills is evolving very, very rapidly. And this COVID context is just amplifying this. Basically, it has accelerated that movement by a significant margin. Once again, if we look at data here from the United States, you can see manual skills are declining in importance. Now that's robots who are taking over whole factories, but actually it's the red line, routine cognitive skills, that have lost out most rapidly. When you look at the positive side of the picture, you can see non-routine analytic skills rising in importance, our capacity to create, to manage tensions and dilemmas, to solve problems that are harder to describe by an algorithm. But also the green line is interesting, social skills, our capacity to collaborate, to connect, to compete with people, to work with people who think differently from us, work differently from us. It's the social skills dimension that is often is underestimated in this digital world. When you actually look at this at the workplace, here's something really interesting. We look at the returns to skills in regular industries and now in digital intensive industries, and you can see actually there's a very significant return to skills in digital intensive industries. This is not just about technology skills. Some people think this is just computer people earning more money, programming and so on. No, that's not true. Actually, you can see it's true for ICT skills, but it's equally true for high-level numeracy skills, for management skills, STEM skills, self-organization, problem solving. So you can see this right across the board. It's not just about what skills you have, it's also the way in which the industry in which you work is capable to translate, better skills into better jobs and better lives of people. So digitally intensive skills seem to be much better in utilizing the potential of people. You can see that also, in a digitally intensive industry, you are more likely to learn from your co-workers. Technology makes us interact more. We all aim for similar things. It makes you more likely to learn by doing. That's also interesting, that technology is actually something that encourages, that challenges us, and that puts our knowledge into question. And also, you can see it makes us significantly more likely to keep up to date. So in that sense, we shouldn't see technology as something just that, takes things away from us. It also adds a lot to the quality of our workplaces, making work more intellectually engaging, more conducive to personal growth, and more conducive to collaboration. Now, how are we positioned on this? One of the things that we've done in the OECD is actually to test the digital problem-solving skills of people. The way we did this, we took large samples in every country, random samples, and we then gave those people a 2-hour test where they had to solve problems using digital technology. And on the right side of the chart, I show you the performance of older adults. Now, these are 55 to 65-year-olds. And you can see in most countries, only about 1 in 10 of those adults have decent problem-solving skills when they are confronted with digital kind of environments. 1 in 10 older workers in the wealthiest countries of the world are ready for the flat world in which we live. You can look at a country like the United States that is better positioned. More older people are better equipped in the United States than elsewhere. But even there, you're only talking about 1 in 5 older workers being ready for the flat world in which we live. Now, I know you're going to tell me, well, that's the problem of older people not keeping up with technology. It's going to look better among the younger generation. And yeah, you can see the bars get longer when you look at 16 to 24-year-olds, but not as much as you think. On average across the OECD countries, you still only have about every second adult in the young population being able to solve, average problems with digital technology. And I'm not talking about, coding or very advanced kind of computer technologies, artificial intelligence. I simply talk about, everyday problems that require digital technology. Opening a spreadsheet, managing a presentation, things like this. And in some countries, Singapore is a great example. A lot of things have happened. The older generation doesn't do very well, but the younger generation is remarkably better. But even in Singapore, the top performer, you have only 2/3 of young people being ready for the flat world. And look at the United States. Among the past, in 20, 30, 40 years ago, the United States did really well. If you look at the young population, the United States is almost at the bottom. What this tells you is that actually success is never forever. Basically, the pace of improvement in the skill supply has been very, very different across countries. Countries like Singapore, Korea, Finland, Sweden, Netherlands, and so on have done a lot to upgrade their digital skills, whereas a country like the United States is not doing much better now than it did, 2 generations ago in a very different context. So this gives us a sense of how fast our countries are advancing to the digital world. Some people call this a race between education and technology. Before the first industrial revolution, neither technology nor education made a big difference for the vast amount of people. But then came the first industrial revolution, moving technology ahead of people and causing huge amount of social pain. But there was also when, the OECD countries created schooling, making people compliant with the ideas of the industrial society. And that created much of the wealth on which our economies have been built. But again, today we see exactly that same kind of development, the digital revolution, once more moving technology ahead of the skills of people. And you can see, academic graduates, university graduates, having difficulties finding good jobs. And at the same time, employers say they cannot find the people with the skills they need. That is the dilemma we need to solve by actually, again, ensuring that humans surpass the capabilities of technology. And that has also to do with how do we redefine success. In the past, it was about you go to school, then you go to university, and then you are prepared for life. Today, that logic no longer works. Early childhood education and care is far more important because that's where we build many of the social and emotional skills that are so crucial for success that later in life are very hard to change. When you think about emotional control, empathy, curiosity, when you are 3 or 4 year olds, that's a skill. When you are 20 or 30, that's almost a personality trait. So early childhood education and care grows in importance. And then tertiary education, the world of work and the world of learning are much closer integrated. The kind of traditional academic education becomes less relevant. The kind of traditional vocational education that is just very practical becomes less relevant. What we see is the emergence of new types of skilling and skill development that integrate the world of work and the world of learning in kind of work. And they do that throughout life. It's easy to learn in life. What is, the previous speaker highlighted this as well, is the capacity that we have to unlearn and relearn when the context changes. Now, that's the theory. If you look at the reality, you can see actually low-skilled people need more training, but actually participate a lot less in training. I don't have data for India here, but I guess, the picture will not be very different. Employers are less likely to invest in training of people who promise less of returns. And often more poorly skilled people are less likely to invest in upgrading their skills if they feel, those returns are not highest. This is a nut that is very, very hard to crack. Very few countries, Norway is an exception here, have managed to get, people from all parts of the skill distribution into training. by making learning very granular, by having a lot of public support for training. But this is a nut that is very hard to crack. Now, we also see that financial measures often do not reach the groups that are most needed. You can see, for example, the share of employers who get financial support for education and training varies by skill level. Now, you can basically also there, see that the employer actually invests in the people who are more highly skilled, while the people who need it most get the least out of this. That's a problem that we need to solve in the future. But please look at this chart. This is for me the most amazing part. We actually surveyed adults. If you can get the training, if we pay for it, would you like to be trained? And actually what you can see here is that there is a majority of older people who basically say, no, thank you. I don't need any training. So the awareness of people in the adult population that the world is changing and that their skill set is, deflating, becoming less relevant, that awareness is often missed. We need to do much better to create a kind of sense among people that, growing, becoming better skilled is an imperative now. France's learning environment. Now, how do you pay for this? What are the incentives? Who sets the standards? How do we actually recognize the level of skills? I think for a country like India, that is a huge challenge. You have such a large informal sector in the economy. Nobody knows what the skills of those people really are. That's why they don't get recognized and rewarded. In that sort of, there's a huge kind of talent pool that is poorly being utilized because the recognition of skills is not yet well developed. Now, building skills as a currency, I think, is very, very important. And the kind of diplomas and degrees that we get from education institutions are a very poor proxy for the real skills that people have. And that's not just true for India. You can see this everywhere. So basically, the digital world requires us to give greater prominence to micro-credentials, to new forms of skill recognition, accreditation, to integrate, skilling. What do you do with people outside France? Now, that's also a huge question. Now, the unemployed, well, you can say, well, that's a job for governments. But what do you do with people at high risk of losing their jobs? Now, think of the truck driver. Who's going to invest in their skills? Who's going to motivate those people to prepare for the next job? You can see countries like Sweden or Denmark doing that really, really well. Maybe Canada, but it's a handful of countries. Most countries basically have no policies and practice in place. People who want to change their job. What do you do with the gig economy, a big part of India's economy? How do we actually invest in upgrading the skills of those kinds of people? And then, new forms of work, the gig economy, how do we collect taxes from this work? When the societies are aging, that's not so much the problem of India, but in the OECD area, we need to invest more in health and pensions. That's going to take money away from the future. Decentralized information sources make it harder to control knowledge. Those are challenges of governance that are absolutely real. And then last but not least, we need a much more integrated approach. We need to better coordinate policies. We need to align policies across different sectors. And then also think more carefully about how do we sequence things so that better skills translate into better jobs and the better lives of people. If you just improve educational outcomes, you don't change the demand picture, you get a lot of human capital dissipating. And that's a little bit the problem that India currently have. If you improve, dramatically access to tertiary education, you don't actually upgrade the foundations, you're going to see very poor impact on skills in the labor forces. That's a huge problem in South America. If you invest, huge amount in R&D, manufacturing, but you don't have the kind of vocational education and training to extract value from this, you will have firms who will not be able to implement the digital transitions. This is the kind of issues that we have, and that's why we need to be better in integrating education policies, labor market policies, industrial policies, and tax policies, social policies to actually solve this kind of problem. But, the world also provides many good examples. As I said, some countries are always at the frontier, and I think we can learn a lot by better sharing and mobilizing the knowledge that we have about effective skill systems. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andreas. That was absolutely exemplary and a well-researched presentation. As always, you have given us a lot of food for thought. And this entire idea of moving from an industrial revolution to digital revolution absolutely needs a complete rethinking and re-engineering of our education and skill ecosystem. And our industry and firms will have to, rethink the way they employ, the way they train their, workers, and absolutely, various other policies that you talked about, taxation, migration, labor laws, etc. The next speaker comes from a country which has developed a robust skill ecosystem, which emerged out of the Industrial Revolution. It will be interesting to learn how Brazil is, coping up with this digital revolution, and what, policy as well as regulatory and changes in the skill ecosystem they are bringing about. And we have our good friend Marcelo Prim, Executive Manager for Innovation and Technology of the National Service for Industrial Apprenticeship, Senai, Brazil, with us. Marcelo is a mechanical engineer and has a master's degree in aeronautical engineering and mechanical engineering from the Technological Institute of Aeronautics, and is a PhD candidate in the Industry 4.0 at the Technological Institute of Aeronautics, ITA. Now, when there is a shift from Industry 4.0 to the COVID pandemic post-era situation, it will be interesting to listen to Marcelo. Over to you, Marcelo.
Okay, thank you so much. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I have prepared some PowerPoint slides. Daniele, okay, so here we go. I will talk a little bit more about innovation, but first I would like to introduce some ideas, concepts, and trends to create a basis for my hypothesis. So first, let's start talking about megatrends. So what we were facing before the COVID-19 pandemics was a demographic development. So we are changing the amount of young people versus elderly people. So next slide, please. In terms of young children and older people, we have in 2020s, those lines are crossing. So we have more elderly people than younger people. It brings also useful challenge for automation. So we are talking about job loss, but as we are going to have more elderly people than younger people, we believe, and we have a strong relationship with MIT in the United States. There is a very interesting research project running over there. It's the future of work of the future, running by Professor Elizabeth Reynolds. And they believe that automation will save us because of this demographic development also. And also, another mega trend, we have a network society. So digitalization is the first industrial revolution in which the change come from outside, not from inside of the industry. So the society itself changed. So we have a network society with distributed prosperity, communications, and so on. So we have this shift, and this shift is putting pressure over the industry. So the industry has to change because as a response to society. Next, please. And then another thing that we were facing before the COVID-19 was polarization. So we have because of this distributed society, we have small islands of strong opinions, and they were rising. So next, please. So we have, for example, just to give you an example, and this is really interesting, is the anti-vaxxer movement. And this is not in America, but it's happening everywhere. And I strongly believe it will change from this disease. But there is this, just to give you an example of how society is getting more polarized. So we have strong opinions everywhere. People are at home and they are tired of being at home. And this movement is getting stronger because of that. So next, please. And then we have the new coronavirus, and it changed everything. So what are the consequences? So next, please. So as a consequence, the coronavirus, just to give you an example, we were here in Brazil talking to companies and planning the digital transformation of companies, how we can support them with skills development, with technology and innovation. And then COVID-19 changed everything. So digitalization, Industry 4.0 is already a reality, even in Brazil. So companies need to change or they will die, basically, period. So next, please. And then, so what we were talking before the crisis was digitization all the time. We were talking with companies that they need to change to be more predictable, to be more efficient, and to increase the productiveness levels, to be more competitive abroad, not only in Brazil. And then we need to change everything because most of companies here in Brazil are stopped. They are in a lockdown. Workers are at home. So and then everybody's thinking about a lot of things, but mostly what we can do to keep our operations even through a very hard time. And it brings us also to this deglobalization movement. So one important topic that people are discussing here in Brazil is that we strongly depend on production from China, from India, from United States, from Europe. So a lot of, just to give you an example, we don't have a strong industry in Brazil that produces masks, surgical masks, and also ventilators to treat the disease. Most of them were bought from China, and those ventilators are not. There is no a strong offer in the market nowadays. So we are SENAI supporting the national industry to increase its production levels to attend the national health system. So it's just an example to bring to the table of a strong trend of deglobalization. So next, please. I'm sorry. There is someone with the microphone, please.
If you are thinking about money, then I'll give.
Please carry on. We'll just get this done.
Okay. So I will keep on. So also there is a strong change of trend. So before the pandemic, we were talking about entrepreneurship, startups, and to be robust. So to resist to the changes and keep the same. So and nowadays, what we are doing or what we need to do is to embrace the change, embrace the risks. So we are moving from economy that was created and giving value to a startups ecosystem, and we don't see a strong response from startups. This is really interesting. Entrepreneurship, yes, it's a strong movement, but startups are not the responsibles to give a strong response. We see a demand from a strong institution, from a strong government, and big companies with startups are given the response, not only the startups by themselves. So we see that to have this behavior of and benefit from changes. We need to have anti-fragile behavior, and we are only able to do that through innovation, through innovative behavior. So next, please. And then it brings me to the current context. So Industry 4.0 was all about the physical and digital transformation altogether. So the cyber physical world. But considering that Industry 4.0 will be a reality from now on, we need to start talking about the biological transformation over the digital cyber physical layer. So we need to start talking about biosynthetics, bioprinting, genetics, not only because to fight this new coronavirus and the new ones that will arise, but also to implement a more human layer over the Industry 4.0. And this is good for everybody. Next, please. Next, please. And this is really interesting. What we were seeing before the pandemics was that in Brazil, mostly, Daniel, uma antes, por favor. Was that we have a strong innovation ecosystem in Brazil, but there were no mission-oriented innovation. And so companies were doing innovation by themselves, not linked with the societal challenges. And what we are seeing nowadays is that, just to give you an example, clean oceans as a grand challenge, but we have at this moment a grand challenge of helping the society to fight this new coronavirus. And when you have a grand challenge, you bring everybody together in a single mission, and all the R&D innovation projects, they are linked to solve micro problems linked to this grand challenge. And this is happening in Brazil, maybe at least for me, at the very first time I see that I am able to see this in Brazil. So all the innovative institutions in Brazil are all together developing solutions to fight this new coronavirus. Next, please. And then just to give you in one slide what we are doing in Brazil, we defined this grand challenge, so fighting against this new coronavirus, and then we created a set of projects, challenges that we are out developing. So we have an innovation call for projects. So and this call for projects is linked to this grand challenge. And then we started 4 different initiatives. So the first one is related to maintenance and reparation of respirators. we have already fixed more than 1,000 respirators that were in the health system, but they were broken because of lack of maintenance. And then we have already fixed them, and they are back to the hospitals, supporting the hospitals to fight the coronavirus. So we have a estimative that each ventilator can support around 10 persons with the disease to support. So we are trying to save with 1,000 ventilators, respirators. We have an estimation that we are supporting 10,000 persons that we are saving their lives. We also created consortiums to increase the productiveness levels of Brazilian industries that are able to manufacture, to produce respirators. So we are increasing 5 up to 10 times the productiveness levels of those companies in Brazil. We are also supporting the local industry to produce and to distribute also alcohol and masks, and so individual protection equipment in order to fight and also to prevent people to get ill. And last but not least, we are developing together with the national industry tests, quick tests to monitor how is the population related to, so if they are getting sick or not, to support the national and also local actions to isolate ill people at home and let the economics get back step by step. So this is what we are doing in Brazil. So we have a strong grand challenge, and we divided this challenge in small pieces. So this brings me to this framework. So we believe that from now on, the new skills development will be supported as we don't know what the future will be, right? We have a strong, we had before the pandemics, and we have more now. We don't know how the future will be. What is the new normal? Nobody knows it. So everybody's guessing. So instead of guessing how the future will be, we choose to develop it, to develop the new future, the new normal. And we are doing this through innovation. So innovation is key, the key to develop that. So we believe that the new normal, the new future will be developed through innovation with big companies, startups, small and medium companies, and research and technology organizations with this mission-oriented innovation drive. And then they will apply technology, new technologies to solve those new challenges as we are now fighting the new coronavirus. But before that, we were fighting the low productiveness levels in Brazil. So we were, before the pandemics, already doing that. We are just speeding up the process. Senai created in Brazil, before the pandemics, innovation productiveness policy with the government to increase the productiveness level. So we embraced this grand challenge, and then we were applying digitization and lean manufacturing and energy efficiency and so on to improve the industry productiveness level. We are using this this behavior through innovation to develop new skills from now on. So Senai created a network of innovation institutes that connects universities with industry, using through the support of the Fraunhofer Society from Germany, and also through a partnership, a research project with MIT, very important to say. So those are the 27 innovation institutes. They are already operational, and very important to say, they are not substituting the Senai schools in the whole country, that we have more than 500 of them in the whole country, but they are working together. So through innovation, we are developing new technologies, applying new technologies, and getting and developing the new normal, the new industry. And through that, we teach our kids using that experience. So we have a knowledge transfer from the innovation institutes to the technology, to the technical schools in the whole country. So we are working together. And this is our key. This is our way of doing business here in Brazil from now on. This is how Senai is working and developing itself and the national industry to the next level. Next, please. And we need to be aware, because this is just the beginning. We will fight this virus. We will win this war, but new wars will arrive. So the climate change is real and it's arriving, especially in developing countries like Brazil, like India. We will face the worst of the crisis, and we need to be prepared. Next, please.
Marcelo, we need to end in a couple of seconds. So if you can speed up.
Yeah, I will. So there is a big challenge coming. Next, please. But if we face the history data, next, please. You can go to the last one if you want. So we can see that through innovation. Just to give an example, air pollutants from United Kingdom is getting down and down, and so there is hope through innovation, through science, embracing science and technology, embracing the new skills. There is hope. We can change from the moment that we're living now, in which our planet Earth is sick. We are sick. If we embrace and if we work together, we can change the world, and we can have a better place to raise our kids. So thank you so much. Sorry, and thank you once again. It was a pleasure.
In fact, thank you, Marcelo. I think it was a very, very interesting perspective through the industry lens. And absolutely, I think there is no denying that the large corporations, the SMEs, and the startups and the education institutions need to all come together to, through innovation, create a new world. And that is what will give rise to the need for new skill sets. Absolutely bang on, and we will share these presentations that have been made with the participants. The next, last but not the least presenter is from a country which the entire world has imbibed from. They are the leaders in skill development and education and innovation. So may I welcome Dr. Ralph Herman, head of GOVIT at BIBB. Dr. Herman has been the head of GOVIT at BIBB, Institute for Vocational Education, since 2017. He graduated from Leipzig and Edinburgh and has a background in area studies on Africa, intercultural studies, and literature. Over to you. Dr. Herman.
Thank you, Chair. I also presented a little PowerPoint, a few PowerPoint slides, which we are going to show in a second. I start speaking while we're uploading displaying the slides. When SARS-CoV-19 reached Germany, we were in the favorable position of having a rather robust and working health system which also turned out to be very flexible and adjustable to the new challenges. Germany took early measures which prevented the worst, actually, which prevented us from running into such devastations as happened to our friends and partners in other European countries, for instance, such as Italy and Spain. We never had a complete lockdown, but measures such as spatial distancing and quite rigid limitations to social contacts did actually work, which were initially decreed from the federal government. Meanwhile, we are in another phase where the authority for handling the crisis lies with the federal entities of Germany, the so-called Länder, or even on a municipal and local level, to actually provide the solutions that are needed on every spot. The crisis has hit Germany's economy as it has hit every economy in the world. Our economy is, as you know, very much export oriented, and the SMEs were hit very hard actually by the crisis. We were in a good position actually of having some leeway due to fiscal austerity before, but also to a very good phase of the economic development in Germany. Nonetheless, the impacts are severe. Of course, with the lockdown closure of many of the companies, the domestic demand has also slumped very much, and this has exacerbated the economic downturn very much. With all volatility to economic forecasts and the predictability of what's going to come under the crisis, particularly from the German Council of Economic Experts estimated there's that there's a contraction of the economy of the GDP of about 4.2%. Some other figures are even much higher. We're now having a very lively debate also on the right balance between health protection on the one hand and liberties in an open society on the other hand, including, of course, the access to economic activities. The government has responded on three major domains of counteracting the crisis. First, protecting the health and the health system with immediate measures. Second, of course, most important here for us, cushioning the consequences for citizens, employees, and companies. And of course, also international cooperation. I'll come back to this. For the first point, Germany has the advantage actually of a working, functioning social welfare state, which made interventions on various domains, including trying to enable people to still continue to earn a living, but also to compensate fallouts, for instance, for parents who could not go to work due to the closure of kindergartens or schools. There were measures for tenants protection, for instance, and there are also such measures as the continuation of education grants to university students, which alleviated the pressure. Likewise, of course, many of the measures and a whole package of measures addressed the economy itself, trying to stabilize the economy and protecting jobs. One of the examples is that the existing regulations on short-time work were expanded and significantly financially supported, so that that companies could make better use and more easy use of these instruments. The German bank that is known to many people, KfW, because it also operates abroad, provided instant loans, liability exemptions were given to SMEs of up to 90%, and guarantees to companies were given as well. One of the major programs is called the Economic Stabilization Fund. This actually addresses the major economic players of the German economy. At the same time, there are also tailor-made interventions in support of solo workers, of self-employed people, and of small and medium-sized enterprises. We did, of course, also experience and encounter challenges in some respects. The standards of work, which we believe are extremely important in our understanding of what good labor actually is, came to question in some of the branches. There's a lively debate on this as well. And we also, as mentioned in one of the previous examples, had some issues actually with the procurement of basic medical equipment as a result of globalization or of non-rational ways of globalization, which also poses questions on how value chains should be organized. We all, of course, we are here at BIP, the Federal Institute for Education and Training. We are extremely concerned, of course, about the implications for vocational education and training. Some of the issues that we see is that the closure of companies interrupted abruptly the work-based learning, which is such a strong component actually of the training system in Germany. So some of the learners actually have lost their contracts or had to properly continue the training. We're also concerned that the number of contracts might decrease due to less of an offer of training placements in 2020 or beyond. And of course, the question to what extent and in what way the learning at the workplace might change is also in the discussion at the moment. Another discussion that we had here actually, particularly here at BIP, occurred during the crisis because it made us very much aware of the value of professions in the critical infrastructure and in the extremely important social professions, such as in medical care, for instance, where as many countries experiences it, there was a lot of good words actually and appreciation of the work of medical care personnel or staff, but it needs more than that. Actually, it needs a proper reevaluation also in terms of incomes of people working in this field. This is a very important discussion at the moment. And perhaps also reverberating what was touched upon in some of the previous presentations or speeches, which were very inspiring actually. Of course, we are concerned about that because it is not only an investment, it is also very productive. Education is a productive field. It's productive in terms of creating the value, creating the skills that are actually underlying technological progress. So it's not actually only digitalization that calls and creates demands for other skills, but it's also actually education that enables us actually to master technological progress. While the first expectations of companies were rather gloomy, now we start embarking on a phase where the outlooks are slightly more positive, but of course, and we encouraged the institute, BIP is encouraging, the industry is encouraging companies to continue with their training office because this is so crucial for our future. Just very briefly, thank you, Chair. You recalled it already that the model of dual training, dual VT in Germany, is a backbone actually of our economy. I just want to very briefly flashlight that this is the composition, how it works actually, and this is also the basis actually for response strategies to the crisis now. As you see here, just the four corners actually show who is involved actually in the governance of ET in Germany. On the one hand, the federal government, at the same time the federal units, the lender, and on the left-hand side you see the social partners on the one hand, the associations of employers, organizations, and on the other hand, also the representatives of employees in our unions. So this is basically the model in which we govern the system, and this is also how we try to respond to COVID-19 and the economic implications it has actually. All those parties, the state and economy and employees, organizations, and also we here at BIB, at the Federal Institute, we all work together trying to find a joint strategy and work together with companies, with state interventions that are possible, all try to secure that quality TVET is to be continued. In one of the speeches before, this is also something that concerns us here, of course, the importance of continuous learning was mentioned. So in a lineup like the one that you see here, there are many players also who are in favor and working on reskilling and creating career pathways. This is the most important part actually. We know that with or without COVID-19, learning under 4.0 is changing, and the duration or the expiring dates actually of skills is shortening. So we have to relearn, and we have to show ways of embarking into that careers actually that are sustainable and take people to future levels. Having said that, there are national challenges and solutions, and this applies to Germany as to any other country. Every country has to find their own way of how to handle COVID-19 and its economic and educational impact. But at the same time, we are strong advocates of partnership and cross-border responsibility. Germany is a major economy on a global level, and so we feel, and also a political player of some weight. We believe that it's very, very important to deal with this crisis in international cooperation and exchange. This is indispensable, actually, because we are, in a sense of global citizenship, all together in this. Of course, at the same time, Germany is an export economy, as I mentioned before, and it's also very clear that we depend with the resilience of our economic system also on the recovery of economies where, for instance, German businesses engaged, where markets are, where value chains are internationally intertwined. And this is going to continue with all the questions that are now posed on how to do this. But we very much believe international collaboration must not be underestimated now in the pursuit of national solutions. And of course, skilled labor is the cornerstone of economic success from our point of view. And this highlights even more how important it is to work with our international partners in TVET. GOVET, the German Office for International Cooperation in VET, has recently started a little survey, starting actually from the 20 partner countries of the BMBF, our Federal Ministry of Education and Research. We try to find out what are the actual challenges, where we inquired with partners on the local perspectives in our partner countries. One of them is India, actually. The German chambers, or the international German chambers, were part of the survey, diplomatic services, but also our direct partners within the countries. Now, the outcome is, of course, tentative, and it's not actually as a surprise that we realize that all of those countries are under pressure. Many examples were given before here in the speeches. In many countries, of course, learning facilities had to close down. Institutions are too reopened. Educational tracks are under pressure or even at stake. Exams had to be postponed, and of course, all countries seek for digital solutions, also for the creation of learning environment, digital learning and teaching environments. But there is a lack of online material, obviously, and there's also a huge challenge in the qualification in pedagogy, methodology of teachers in our partner countries, but also in Germany. We have to make progress on that, very clearly so. In midterm, there might be, or it's likely actually, that companies reduce their investment into vocational education and training in our partner countries. We try to counteract this in Germany, but we're also concerned about this in our partner countries. And even the understanding of the organizational framework of dual education is at risk in many countries. And as mentioned before, we also realize that in other countries there is a change in the perception of systemically relevant occupations or of critical infrastructure professions. This is very much in line with what we see here. I would just briefly like to come back to one of the previous speeches. I think in Nivruti Rai's speech, you made a very, very strong pledge for the most vulnerable groups. This is, of course, also something that we believe must not be forgotten. We had a discussion today at the round table for international cooperation in VET. It brings together the various German government portfolios. This is a concern that we also have in our national discourse, that the divide may even get larger. But also in our international cooperation, we are aware actually that in many countries of the world, some of the response strategies have to be different from what we do in Germany, because the environment is different. But we would like to be partners and stay in dialogue with our partners in all of those countries, and actually have a look at many of the issues that were reasoned out with regard to India previously, with regard to vulnerable groups. A major concern of development cooperation also from the German side. To conclude this, it seems that the German dual system is resilient. It has weathered many storms before. In 2008, the financial crisis, the oil crisis in the 70s, and it is still a very, very strong backbone of our economy and the education system. So the strong cooperation between state and social partners with a common goal to provide quality VET and to make VET attractive to youngsters is still very important. And of course, the legal framework that we have with the Vocational Education and Training Act is also very helpful in this. Is the crisis a chance, or is there a chance in the crisis? I wouldn't like to romanticize about that. Obviously, the impacts of the crisis are extremely hard, actually, worldwide. Also in Germany, we feel this. But nonetheless, we would also like, we have no other choice than looking also for the chances in the crisis. It might be a catalyst for further digitization. As I mentioned before, the things that we look for, learning environments, capacitating people, learners as well as trainers and teachers. It's a moment actually of finding creative solutions, looking for new ways that strengthen TVET. And of course, it's from an international point of view, a need and an opportunity for intensified cooperation. Thank you very much. And I would like to, I would also like to mention at the very end, thank you to you at FICCI. It's a very, very laudable initiative to bring this group here together, and we're very happy to join you. Thank you very much for your initiative.
Thank you so much. And I think we can't thank you more for giving us this wonderful presentation that actually showcased, why Germany's dual VET system is a success. And, we all are trying to emulate it, but there are challenges, which within our, large country, diverse country. So we will definitely would like to, from FICCI, like to, cooperate and collaborate with you to see how we can maybe do a few pilots across few states. We have 6 state skill development mission heads sitting, within the participants group. So definitely we would like to, engage with them and take the dialogue forward. Because we have run out of time, so we are going to be, and we won't be taking any Q&A, but if there are any questions, we will be more than happy to take it and pass it on to the, eminent panelists and get back to you with the questions, the answers. Before I summarize, I think for me, there are 4 takeaways which I would just like to put on the table. I think it is time for India to relook at the national skill policy. We are on the brink of coming up with the national education policy, and it is time that we redefine the national skill policy as well. Mohan talked about creating a digital platform, and definitely we need to have seamless flow of data, both from the supply side and the demand side, and allow AI, machine learning to throw up analytics that will help governments and industry to strategize and come up with policy. Data asymmetry has been the biggest challenge for lack of equity and access in our country. Definitely what Marcelo presented, it is, and also Rolf, you presented, that industry, academia, government, small, large companies, startups, everyone has to come together, innovate, and come up with solutions for the sustainable development goals and environmental challenges that we are facing, and that definitely will also give rise to the new skill development ecosystem. And last but not the least, from being a consumption-led society, we need to perhaps become a bit frugal society. So with this, I would like to thank once again our eminent panelists, Mr. Mohandas Pai, Ms. Nivriti Rai, Mr. Andres Schleicher, Mr. Marcelo Prim, Dr. Rolf Herman, Mr. Dilip Chinoy. Thank you all. And last but not the least, thank you, the FICCI team, for putting this entire show together, and the participants for listening in. I'm told that we are being watched across 6 to 7 countries. Thank you all, and we shall come back with another initiative like this. Have a good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay
Thank you.
safe,
Good night.
stay healthy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.